This one's for the culture. Me and wifey in the room thinking of a master plan, thinking how we can influence the culture from where we stand. Knowing that our steps are ordered by the master's hand, still 10 toes down, we ain't switching up the stance. The mission of this music ain't just to make them dance, trying to tell them about the rock, cause they build.
And welcome to episode 30 of The Bond Chronicles. I am Mr. Bond Chronicles on Instagram, Mr. Raymond on Twitter, and my host,
Mrs. Bond Chronicles on Instagram. I'm going to get Twitter together one of these days.
And I guess that's all we got for her. So we are also on Facebook, individually and collectively as The Bond Chronicles. Please look us up, like, share, subscribe on our YouTube as well. The Bond Chronicles. We are slowly climbing the subscriber ladder. So excited to try and hit some more benchmarks. We are almost 6 months in, something like that.
Started March.
Yeah, March 1st. Yeah, 9 months. Yeah, so it's 6 months. Wow. Time flies when you're having fun. We have
this is episode 30.
Yeah.
Dang. Okay.
What? 70 to go. Minimum.
I know, it's crazy.
Shout out to one of our affiliates, the Fat Girl Chronicles, on celebrating a year. That is an amazing achievement, something we have just hit the halfway mark, and they've just continued to do great things. So shout out to them.
And I'll be on there.
You will be
tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Because tomorrow is Tuesday.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I didn't know it was that soon.
Yeah, tomorrow. And not as the Bond Chronicles, but as Robyn Bond representing Reaction Apparel. So check me out. I'll have stuff posted, I'm sure, by the time this releases.
Have they sent you any of the promo stuff?
No, because I haven't sent them a picture.
Well, there you go. So we'll definitely get that out. So yeah, you guys definitely will be getting a lot of entertainment from us during the next week. So it's definitely an exciting time. So today's episode, we are going to get into a couple different things. We had some big things in the world take place, or at least in the world of music and hip hop, that we'll start with, and then we'll get into some more. Why are you looking?
Oh, no, I didn't. Go ahead. You got it.
All right. So staying there. And then we'll get into some more, I guess maybe serious. I'll be curious to know how that conversation goes, because we haven't really talked about it. But
did you look at the notes?
Yes, I looked at the notes, but we haven't talked about it.
Okay.
So I think you may be surprised at some things I have to say based on what I saw. But you did a great job. Typically she doesn't read the notes, but this time she had to read the notes because she made the notes.
I do be reading the notes.
There's mad times you be on here like, I didn't know that was in there.
No, it's not mad times. We've only done 30 episodes. And I feel
that's a lot. That is a lot.
And so I feel like majority of the time, I at least glance at the notes. And typically we have discussed what we're going to talk about to some extent before.
Not in relation to the show. Usually that's in relation to like life.
Yeah, but that's where the content from the show comes from.
Yeah, but you don't always know. That's not important. So yeah, first things first, shout out to New York. New York did it again, as far as
they're always doing stuff, man. Like, it's just all the Verzuz be dope in New York. And just lately, because Drake isn't from New York and Kanye isn't from New York.
They didn't do Verzuz.
I'm just thinking of like all the cool hip hop news that's come out recently. And I just feel like every time I turn around, it's something about New York. But maybe not. I could be wrong.
I don't know. What was the VMAs at? That was in New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Didn't watch them. Didn't care much about it. Shout out to Justin Bieber for winning Artist of the Year. Apparently some people disagree. My co-host, apparently. I felt it was well-deserved, considering the people he went against. And I don't think that any individual artist has done much more than he has. But, again, that's my opinion. But that's not where we're starting. We're starting with the Verzuz. Shout out to Fat Joe. Shout out to Ja Rule. And the plethora of guests that they had.
It was mad people on stage.
It was. Not like Locks and Dipset, a lot of people on stage. And this seemed like a bigger stage. Anyway, but and it ended up being a lot of people. So when I first heard about it, I figured Ja would win. For me, like, I figured that was my first thought growing up at our time frame. Ja Rule kind of went on the Wayne run before Wayne, but he did his in like the Drake version where he was like the singing rapper, and he owned that in the verses multiple times. Where he said, "I'm the singing rapper." Right. So it was interesting to hear him classify himself as that, even though we all knew that to be the case. But don't get it confused. Ja Rule got some hard records, and I've listened to some of his music as an adult, realized he was a little more vulgar than just a nice singing rapper.
For sure. I think even while we were watching the Verzuz, like when he did Can I Get A, and I realized I only actually know the words to the edited version. Like, I know the words to the unedited version, but not the way I know the words to the edited version. And every time I hear the unedited one, I'm just like, yeah, I shouldn't have been listening to this.
Yeah. We talked about that. We have talked about that a couple times, and we won't go off in that direction here today, but there's a lot of things about our childhood. From the shows we watched, to the music we listened to the movies we watched, and then the whole Lil Nas X situation about what you expose to children, and if it's different between now and then. So I enjoyed it. I had a good time. We watched it together, and I thought Fat Joe missed on some opportunities early.
For sure.
I thought he dug himself a hole. There's a couple songs I thought I would hear that I did not hear. I thought he picked it up in the second half. And definitely, I thought if the first half would have been like the second half, would have been a much more compelling battle. I thought it was entertaining, but he needed an intermission, which was kind of awkward, but so be it. Ultimately, I think Ja won pretty easily, but I appreciated the guests. Nelly and Ashanti on the same stage, I thought was awkward, but they seemed to handle it well. I saw some stuff after the fact. Apparently, Ashanti's in a relationship. News to me. Apparently, news to Ja Rule and Fat Joe, who are apparently friends of hers. So, yeah, it was an interesting night. I thought it was good for hip hop. I thought it was good for New York. I thought it was another notch. A while ago, I said I thought Verzuz was on its way out, and I was wrong.
You were very wrong, actually. It's cool that you admit that, because we had that whole conversation. And I was just like, no, like if they can continue to get quality people and they work it in such a way where they're not competing with outside and they're not competing with sports, which they've done a really good job of doing.
They smartened up.
Yeah. Like the viewership, I don't think has waned at all. For real. And then the people that they're choosing to come on, or the people that are volunteering and coming on, like they have enough fanfare around them that it's still doing big numbers. Like to watch it. Oh, I know, because I think we did figure out how to watch it for free on the Triller Fight app or whatever. But even now, like they have a subscription option, and it's like, okay, everybody's trying to make money from this now.
And I think the business model is solid. They signed Teofimo Lopez, who hopefully will someday fight Gervonta Davis, but he's fighting some nobody he should knock out pretty easily.
Soon?
Yeah. So it's on the app. It's pay-per-view. I'm not paying for it. He's not that big of a star.
Gervonta Davis said he's fighting somebody soon, too.
Yeah, but they're not fighting each other. I will be paying for whatever Davis's fight is, and depending on when you drop this load and the time of the fight, I might try and go. But we'll see. Got to be a supportive husband and father. But yeah, I thought, the performance was good. I am excited, like I said, to see what comes next. I think the big key here, and from what I understand, is they're paying people now. So I think when you throw money at people, you can get better acts and better talent.
This is also very true.
Because how they started this new version, I thought it was going to be more of that, and that wasn't going to work. But I think they've spent the necessary money. It appears that the Teofimo fight is also at the Hulu Center. So apparently that venue and Verzuz seem to have some kind of partnership, because the last couple events have been there.
The Hulu Stadium or whatever is part of Madison Square.
It is.
But we don't know what that setup looks like or how that works.
What do you mean?
Like Madison, like, oh, I've never been inside Madison Square. I can only assume from pictures that I've seen and things of that nature. But Madison Square is like one, big arena thing.
Mm-hmm.
So where in that building is, because that room that they had the Verzuz in did not look like where the Knicks play basketball.
No. So it's like a casino that has different ballrooms, or a hotel that has different ballrooms.
Gotcha.
You have the main area. I haven't been in Madison Square, but you have the main area. But then outside of that, you have, because when you look at it, it's not a big room.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, that didn't look like a very big space to begin with.
Yeah.
But is that the same space where the locks
yes. The lights were the same.
But it looked totally different.
The stage changed. It was the ring where Fat Joe and Ja Rule were. That stage was wider, but the DJs were in the same spot. They just had the walkout, and then there was more space cleared out for the ring. Which, when they do fights there,
makes sense.
It was set up that way. So you probably had less crowd, but that was slightly earlier in COVID when New York was really, really locking down at some point. So I think that was part of it. And you probably went to limit capacity because you want to pop off of those two groups.
I'm going to have to go back and look and take a look at the way that it was set up. Because like I said, to me, the rooms look completely different. Yeah, I would say Fat Joe, he definitely left a lot to be desired, I think, as far as the songs that he picked. Obviously, Ja Rule hasn't released any new music in like 20 years. It's been a long time. And Fat Joe has had some hits in the last 10 years with various artists that are still currently active. And so I was really surprised that he played something. And this could just be because I'm not a huge Fat Joe fan. Like, I don't dislike him or anything. I'm just not super familiar with his discography. And so, like, the first 3 or 4 songs that he played, like, I didn't even know the songs. And it didn't seem like a lot of people in the crowd knew the songs for real either. But Ja Rule came out there, bangers from the very beginning. And I just found it really funny that Fat Joe just kept saying, you're playing all these old songs and they don't bop like they used to or whatever. And Ja Rule was like, no, they're doing exactly what I want them to do. Like, these songs are classics. That's what you call a good song that is aged really well. You call it a classic. And that's exactly what they were. If he had just played all of his features with Ashanti, like, he would have easily put him away. I did like Ja Rule's energy. Like, he was real positive, upbeat. The trash talk back and forth was funny. But I think that's what we've come to expect, especially of rappers at Verzuz battles. Like, they're not so much of the whole kumbaya thing like the R&B singers do. It's more, I'm stepping on your neck and I intend on doing it the entire time. Which was it? When the Birkin bag thing, that was kind of weird. It was like, hey, I've got gifts for you. And Remy Ma, Ashanti and Remy Ma, he gave them Birkin bags. And like, for me, I was like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. But earlier in the show, he called Lil Mo and Vita like dusty whatever. And there was a lot of backlash for that because he's had to come back since and apologize for it.
As he should have.
Yeah. And I just didn't understand like where that came from, what that vibe was. But even when Remy was opening the box, like, her face was like, what is this? And then she opened and she was just like, oh, a Birkin bag. I don't think I've ever seen Remy Ma with a Birkin bag either. So that might not necessarily be her thing. And I've seen Ashanti with one, so
not surprising.
It's not surprising. Ashanti looked good. She looked so good. And then, yeah, she did.
I don't think she's ever not looked good, to be honest. Like,
I don't think so either.
She looks like she did 20 years ago when I was making them songs. Like, I don't know what her regimen is. I don't follow her on
see,
social
that's
media.
the thing. Like, I follow her on Instagram, and like she works out, but I don't feel like it's anything super strenuous to the point where her body looks like that. And she be eating. Like, she travels a lot to all these different places, and she eats. And I'm just like, I gotta contact somebody who contacts somebody to know somebody, so I can figure out what she's doing. So after I drop this load, that can be the wave I'm on, because she looks amazing. And to the Nelly point, like, she didn't hug him. Like, I think he walked up for a hug, and she was like, "Nah, bro, we good." And somebody's like, "He's single," and she's like, "No, I'm not single." So
I agree. I thought that I would say it was awkward initially because I feel like this has been Ja Rule's kind of whole career, where he's an easy target. He's like the previous Kanye, where it's just some of the things he's done. Fire Festival is Fire Festival. Like, you can't escape you being attached to Fire Festival.
Yeah,
and disaster.
The disaster that was.
So that's an easy shot. 50 Cent has made it perfectly fine to. He bought up the seats that was on Groupon for one of his shows. So the first 3 rows are empty. Like, 50's trolling of Ja Rule has made him an easy target. So I wasn't sure what to expect when him and Fat Joe, because I know they're really, really tight. The line about the women back there not feeding his people, I thought that was unnecessary. Ja took it in stride. They pieced it up at the end. But I think there's just certain things you don't do to your friends publicly.
Yeah.
Like, you can trash talk about him having old music. You can trash talk about him being a singing rapper. But him basically saying he's not taking care of his label, taking care of the women, and I am, and all my people are paid.
And that's
it just came off as kind of distasteful.
Yeah, because like he kept trying to make it seem as though Ja Rule was like broke. And Ja Rule still sells out shows. Like, he might not be selling out large arenas here in the States, but I know overseas, like, he sells out shows. And people love to come see him. People, even though the whole, like you said, the Fire Festival was, like, ridiculous, people still support him. And he still does stuff behind the scenes. Like, I know that he still, like, writes and produces for people and all that good stuff. And off the strength alone of his, like, his music, samples and all of that, like, Ja is okay. Like, he might not be out here balling out of control like some people, but those are typically the people who are actually really, really broke and are spending up all their money and won't have any in, 20 years. So that irks me a little bit. And like I said, like, the way that his Fat Joe's strategy, like, I don't know if what music he thought that Ja was going to play, but he didn't deviate from what his original set list was, I think, until the second round, where he realized, like, Ja is really, really winning this. Like, I might be talking all this trash, but he's killing me. Because by the end of the first round, which was really hard to tell because I don't feel like anybody was keeping an accurate count, like, Ja Rule had won the majority of the rounds in the first one. And unfortunately for Fat Joe, like, there were still plenty of songs that Ja Rule, like, there was a bunch that I thought he would have played, but he didn't even touch them.
Get to it.
Yeah.
I think Fat Joe he tried to follow the Jadakiss Locks blueprint, and he failed because he wanted, the difference between Jada and the Locks versus Dipset was it was 2 street groups. And so I can perform my street stuff better than you can perform your street stuff, and my street stuff is going to hit better than your street stuff because of the way I perform it. Ja Rule performed way better than Dipset would have performed. His energy was there from the beginning. He was talking his trash. He wasn't changing a bunch of outfits. He came out as Ja Rule.
He did.
Outside of him taking his shirt off towards the end.
Which is also a very
Ja Rule thing. He stayed in character. He didn't deviate from his plan, and he knew what he came to do. And the other thing that was kind of surprising, I don't have the numbers, there was a lot of women there.
Oh, yeah.
when he was playing when John was playing his songs, he was having people singing along.
But women singing.
It was a bunch of women singing. So I think when you got, and maybe call it 50-50, those Fat Joe records wasn't hitting with all them women.
Mm-mm.
So
some of them was, you know.
I'm talking about the first round. That first, I guess it was 2 rounds. It was weird how they set it up. But I think all those unreleased early tracks before Ja was outside and all that, so was the rest of the audience. None of them were outside.
And that's the thing. Like, he opened up with a song. I'm just like, I have never heard this before. And for what it's worth, it probably is a song that like his fans were a big fan of, or just Latino people in general, like, because he has been in that scene for a really long time. So they probably knew it. But from the looks of it to the general audience that was in attendance, everybody was lost like we were. Like, even because I was we were both on social media. I'm talking to like my sister and some other people, and they're like, because people think I know all the songs, and I was like, nah, I've never heard this one.
Yeah. And I think that's the part about Verzuz that is tough, and it takes a lot of self-awareness, but understanding you got to have 20 songs, not just 20 songs.
No, but 20.
You got to have 20 songs.
Bangers.
If you're not current, and a lot of these people, in order to get 20 hits, you got to have been out for a while. So you got to try and remember and see if those songs are going to hit like they do today. And singing R&B-ish songs, a lot of times those can still hit. Women are going to embrace that. A lot of those hardcore underground rap songs, depending on how you perform it, may or may not hit, especially with a big female contingent or a really young audience.
I was going to say, I think that's a bigger part of what it could lead up to. Just because, like, for me personally as a music person, like, if a record is good, a record is good. Like,
but a record can be good lyrically and not a hit. Like, you can be saying a bunch of stuff, but if it don't sound right, if your production's not right, if your mixing isn't right, if your vocals aren't right,
when you perform it after it's been some time since it was a hit,
or even if it wasn't even a hit, like, you could have been talking. And
no, but that's what I'm saying. Like, a song that's considered a hit originally came out 95 or whatever. Like, it didn't. If it's a good song, then it's a good song forever. Like, I don't think there's ever going to be a time where people hear the beat drop or taking over for the 992. Like, I don't think that's ever going to not hit people the way that it hit 20 years ago. Like, the Fireman's coming, like,
you think, and I think Fireman's a great example. You think that would hit with today's generation like it hit with us?
I mean, it's different because they weren't outside when it originally came out, but people know when that song comes on, like, where to go, what to do, and understand the assignment.
I feel like they don't play that anymore.
Or no, Nuck If You Buck. Like, there's never going to be a time, I think, I won't say there's never going to be a time, but especially like if you're in the South, Nuck If You Buck comes on, that song hits.
And you're right, in the South, but there was a time that song played in Wyoming.
Right.
And I don't know if this next generation of teens in Kansas City are going to care about Nuck If You Buck.
I don't know, because it still gets played. Like,
we ain't been to Kansas City.
All I'm saying is, like, when you think about the way that music recycles itself, like we were talking about the Andy Mineo song that's super hot. It's coming in hot. Yeah. The song came out 4 or 5 years ago at this point.
It wasn't that old. I think it was like 2018.
Okay.
I guess it was 4 years ago.
Yeah, like 4 years ago. And it's having this resurgence, and people are just like, oh, this song is so hot. And we're just like, yeah, but it's it's still a dope song.
Like, I think a song performed that like 3 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Or like Shaggy in the Super Bowl commercial. It wasn't me. Like, that song was a bop 20 years ago. And now you have people putting it in TikToks and all of these, new social media platforms, making it come alive again. Like, that's one thing that you've seen consistently.
But I think those
Verzuz.
are rare. Like, if you went back to the top 100 of 2000, Song number 50 may or may not.
No.
And for if you're Fat Joe, you didn't have a bunch of the songs we're talking about. Mm-hmm. He didn't have a Knuck If You Buck per se. He had Lean Back, which is probably the closest.
Yeah.
Make It Rain. There's a couple other joints he has.
Mm-hmm.
Another Round's a big song, but in the verses you need like
20 of those. Yeah,
at least 15. If you're going against someone like Ja Rule.
And that's the thing. Like, if you've got 15 solid songs, like, you can build a really good set list that works in your favor, and then throw in some of those crowd favorites that, you know, people who listen to your whole album, like, oh man, if I go, I really want to hear him do that song.
Because that's the thing. A lot of these artists have made great albums, and when you listen to that song on that album, it sounds like, oh yeah, that was a good song on that album.
But you think of the album, you think about the song that was never released on the radio.
Right. And so when you then play that song in the verses, and people are like, it was good then, but it ain't versus material. So I think that's tough. Shout out to Fat Joe for standing across from Ja. I know a lot of people wouldn't have wanted to do it. Allegedly, Ja was trying to get 50 to do it.
And that's the thing. Like, 50 was, leading up to the battle, 50 didn't say a whole lot.
I agree.
And then after the fact, like, he's been super vocal. I think because Irv Gotti said something, mostly because people were pointing out how quiet 50 Cent was. And Irv Gotti said something along the lines of, like, you guys are idolizing this guy who you think ended Murder, Inc., when in reality, he didn't end Murder, Inc. My criminal charges ended Murder, Inc. And 50 was just like, don't make me dead y'all's careers again. And, you know, people came in with the facts. And it's like, yeah, he might have, like, embarrassed Ja Rule. But, again, Ja Rule didn't, like, fall off the face of earth. Like, it just changed the trajectory of his career to the point where he wasn't as popular. But he still has mad fans.
And I think the other part is the reality that it's hard to have a Wayne, Drake, Jay-Z run in music. Mm-hmm. And Ja's run is long. He goes back to early Jay.
The first Jennifer Lopez, like Bennifer, like they didn't. I think that's what a lot of people fail to remember, or they just forget because of the whole hoopla with him and 50. And 50's starting to get on my nerves, to be 100% honest. Like, I just want him to just make TV shows and be quiet, because he just be saying stuff out the side of his face. And it's just really starting to get irritating. Like, don't be so miserable all your life.
I mean, for me, like, you know, I'm all for a good troll. But when you have a platform like Verzuz, there's no way Ja Rule should have been on that stage and you shouldn't have been on that stage across from him. Like, I don't want to hear
50 could beat Ja Rule.
And that's the thing. I think 50 got around his people. I don't know if he's still dating Cuban Link or whoever he with. And
no idea.
I don't either. But I think he sat down and said, you know what, I got a bunch of joints, but Ja got a bunch of joints. Mm-hmm. And for 50 to be 50, that's one of those risks you don't take. Because if he got on that stage and it went how I think it would go, it would be really, really hard for him to live that down.
Yeah, it wouldn't have went very well. Because, like, I remember Get Rich or Die Trying, how a mega smash hit that album was. Mm-hmm. But then what was after that?
The Massacre?
Was it The Massacre?
I think so.
And I remember like 3 songs after that. But then after The Massacre,
his songs, yes, but similar to Ja, 50 did have a bunch of features, and he got a bunch of G Units.
He did. And so if you culminate all of that, he could come up with a solid 20.
Probably 3 features on Games documentary.
Yeah.
Probably strong points.
And
good.
And so it's just like, when you put all 3 of those like all of that together, yes, he has 20 songs. But do those 20 songs do better than Ja Rule's 20? Because like I said, like, Ja Rule played some hits, but he left a lot of money on the table as far as what he could have done. But I think, like, as we saw the battle going, like, he was adjusting his list. Like he was going up and switching stuff around, like you saw him talking to the DJ, doing all that. And so I think had it been him against 50 Cent, we would have seen a whole different battle.
Agreed. But I also think the key in Verzuz, and we saw this with Dipset and Locks, we saw it with this, and we've seen it with some others, whoever can get the other person to change their strategy typically wins. And we saw that after the intermission, Fat Joe came out with a bunch of the R&B joints, the singing joints. He realized this street angle is not working. And so we saw the same thing when Dipset thought they had Locks, and then Jada's like, hold up, I got those too. We saw a similar thing with Bow Wow and Soulja. I don't know if you watched that.
Yeah, I didn't watch that one.
But Bow Wow stayed too. I got hits. And then Soulja tried to do the same thing, but do you got current hits? He like, I got hits. We saw the same thing with Jeezy and Gucci. He like, you playing all the old stuff. Yeah, but that old stuff worked. And that's a whole different level of, how it works. So I thought I was entertained. I'm excited to see what happens next.
Yeah, because I don't think they've announced another one or anything. I know they had a lineup.
I remember there was a schedule, but I don't even. Are they sticking to that anymore?
I think that's done with this point. After the Essence Festival, that thing with Jade. Yeah, I think that was
that personal, but
I think that's as far out as they were planning.
Cool. I think the other part, and for me, that I give Ja a lot of respect for is, from what I can tell, is like a really good dad and like husband.
He's married?
I think so. He wore a ring. And I think I've seen pictures of his family. I think he's been married for a minute, actually. I think he has a couple of daughters.
I didn't know that.
But his just energy was positive. He never went down. He threw shots at like, Remy, you're saving him. But he kept it above bar.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to who he is and what he's been through. Because he was outside doing sometimes. But speaking, kind of about parenthood and things like that, you had something you wanted to kind of get into, and I thought it was valid, so I'll kind of let you read it. And for the people, we'll read it for our audio listeners, and then visually we'll put it up, or it's going to be up for you guys.
Put it up on there, or no, after I start talking about it. Oh, okay. Yeah, switching gears just a little bit. I saw this thing on Facebook, I guess today, yesterday, whenever, at some point I saw it. And basically, the post was talking about a young woman posted that her Indian coworker had a baby, and her parents came from India to help take care of the baby for basically the first year, so they didn't have to put the baby in daycare. And then she said when the baby turns 1, they plan to take the baby back to India for a few months until they can find a nanny that follows their Indian culture. Someone else I know is Chinese. Her daughter is 1 and will return to China with her mother to stay until she is of school age so that they can work and not have to worry about childcare. She then goes on to say, I'm sitting here trying to figure out why so many Black Americans have this you had a baby, you struggle on your own mentality. And at the end, the question is, where did our village go? ... It burned down clearly. And I'm part of a lot of like mom groups, like Black family, marriage, like all this kind of things on social media. And I actually see this kind of question, this scenario posed a lot. For me, like, it's not something I've personally experienced. When I had Courtney, single, her dad was like, nah. And so I was like, okay. But even before, like, I had to start working my gears to try to figure out how I was going to figure out being a single mom, like, my mom swooped in and saved the day. My Nana was the first person at the hospital after I had Courtney. Like, I have a village. I have a very strong village. And now that we're together and we have the boys, we've got one on the way, our village has gotten even bigger, even stronger. Grandparents literally fight over who gets to have them, when they can have them, and that kind of thing. And so I personally can't relate to what that feels like or how it feels to feel like I'm doing this all on my own, my kid and me against the whole wide world. But and especially in the Black community, it's a very common theme. And so we just wanted to kind of talk about like what happened to the Black family village, because once upon a time that was a serious structure. It was a thing. Like we stuck together, we helped raise each other's kids, and we might have talked trash about doing it, but we did it. And that's kind of like where I want to go with it. This rest of this episode.
Okay. So I guess I'll give my perspective. I think it's definitely multifaceted. I don't think this is a binary reasoning as to what has happened to the village. I think culturally it's just different. And I know people don't like to hear it, especially not rich white America, but the Black family construct has been under attack since it was brought to this country.
Mm-hmm.
And in many ways it's never stopped. Like, whether it's been through slavery, whether it's been through gentrification, whether it's been through redlining, whether it's been through the crack epidemic, whether it's been through the welfare program, whether it's been through the
school to prison
pipeline. It's been that way, and our community has been targeted relentlessly since our inception into this country. So, as far as where the village is, I think the village went to work. I think all of our grandparents work currently to this day. I think they're all in their 50s and they all work. They're not afforded the luxury.
Our parents.
Yeah, our parents. Our kids' grandparents are not afforded the luxury to just come and just keep the kids. Like, they got work. So when we travel, we have to work around their work schedule. My dad travels a lot now. My mom has to work 8, 12 hours a day, and she had to do that all throughout my upbringing when my parents split. And I think most people are in that similar scenario. They talk about don't sell grandma's house. We've done that. Like, there's been so many things put in place, and specifically I think that reference to Chinese culture. It's an Asian culture that has benefited. We saw what happened when I believe it was Chinese, if I'm wrong, correct me, a Chinese parlor got shot up in Florida. Amazingly, a bill got passed, like immediately. But someone can walk into a church and shoot up 9 people, and the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act is still
dead on the floor.
Still dead on the floor. Breonna Taylor's law went into effect, but nobody was held responsible for her death. And there's a ton of people. I'm not even going to go through that process of potentially forgetting somebody or bore you guys with all the names that continue to grow. Like, we haven't seen another George Floyd incident, but to think that was the last time
happening.
A police officer killed an unarmed Black person, you're losing it. Like, you're delusional. So I think that's a lot of it. I think there is no village because the village is at work.
Disarray.
It's in disarray. It's torn. Family dynamics are strained. I can speak to that within my family on both sides. So you don't even have a village within your own family. A lot of times if you've made it to a successful middle class lifestyle, you're not surrounded by a bunch of people that look like you. You're probably one of the few Black people in your neighborhood. So are you going to let your Black kid go play with a bunch of white people? Maybe, maybe not. Are the white people going to support you while you're working for free? Probably not. So I think it's just our construct is just so different. I don't know that it necessarily burned down. I think as the crack epidemic took dads out of the household and destroyed the family structure, which we've talked about, people had to go to work at younger and younger ages. And there were more and more single mothers. So I can't help you with your 3 kids when I got 3 of my own. Mm-hmm. And it's sad, but I don't think it was necessarily intentional on our part I think it was intentional from governmental agencies and outside factors. And yes, we have some responsibility for it, but I think a lot of it we didn't.
No, yeah, pretty much everything that you said, I definitely agree with. When you take a look at what Black families look like from like the 40s to the 70s, most of them, even though they didn't have the same wealth of your average white American family, like they were still families. They lived in communities where we supported each other. We helped each other with a myriad of things because at that time we really only had each other. And if we weren't looking out for each other, it was very likely that somebody possibly didn't come home. Um, and then just the reality of as all these other factors started crushing the Black community, like we lost a lot of traditions. Like you never really hear very much about Big Mama's house. Like that's not really a thing anymore. And like my mom, she jokes about buying a big piece of property so that me and my sisters can all live on in our own houses, but on that big piece of property. And she has a house like up at the top of the hill or whatever where all the kids can come and you get to spend time with your cousins and be family. But you don't hear about that a lot. Like I know my family still has family reunions, but I know there are a lot of families that don't have them anymore. We haven't had it the last 2 years because of COVID, but we intend on picking it back up. But that's a tradition that has been lost in a lot of Black families. And like you mentioned, like the lack of resources to be able to say, hey, mom, come and live with us for XX amount of time and, we can support you. When it's really grandma's got a whole list of her own bills that she needs to pay before she retires. And granddad has been working, for forever. But after the economic crash, he no longer has a pension. So he's got to keep working to rebuild up his life savings so that when he does retire, him and grandma won't have to lose the house. Like there are all these little nuances of things that have taken away from the Black family dynamic. And in so many ways, I think we haven't done enough to try to rebuild them. Everybody's getting more conscious and more aware of how important generational wealth is now. But I want to say maybe the last 20 years, there hasn't been like a big cultural push like there is today for us to be more conscious of the way that we're spending our money and more conscious of the way that we're investing so that when we do get to our older years, we can retire and enjoy being grandparents and enjoy just the rest of our lives instead of having to work until you die, basically. A thing that is very prevalent in my mom groups, though, is a lot of grandparents, they just don't want to do it. Like they have their own lives. They feel like I raised you. You are competent. You can do what you need to do for yourself. I'm about to go and live my life. I'm retired. I want to enjoy the rest of, my years. And I don't want to babysit your kids or whatever every other weekend or, have my schedule tied to your schedule so that your kids can not have to go to daycare. I see a lot of those kinds of complaints in the mom groups. What are you doing?
Writing stuff so I don't forget while you continue to educate us on your perspective.
Yeah, and that's a big complaint that like they have active parents and people in their lives, but they're kind of like, no, those are your kids. Go take care of your kids. And that to me is obviously that causes a lot of tension, especially when you have someone who's struggling to take care of their kids alone and they need help and they can't get it from the people who they feel should be helping them. So I guess my next question is it realistic to believe that your family should help you, with your kids, regardless of whether you're struggling or not. Should they be available to help you?
Should it be? You said is that realistically the family should be? I think it can be realistic. But I think the world, especially the world today, is just really, really hard. This COVID world, this work from home world, this modern woman world, this tech savvy. I think it's different. I think it's difficult. I think it can be realistic for people to come around, because we've had people at church all the time. Yeah, send us your kids for a day, maybe a couple hours. But the idea that they would take our kids, I think one was from like 1 until it was grade school.
Mm-hmm.
Like 1, we're not doing that. You're not taking my kid for 4 or 5 years. I think those are critical years. You can miss potty training. You can miss first steps.
Everything.
You can miss first words. There's a ton of stuff that you would miss in the development. I can look at our kids. I told you today, I was like, I don't know if our kids are smart or not based on whatever we got to go back for the 2-year thing, but they seem smart to me. Like the stuff they do, Raymond keeps climbing up on top of the dresser. I don't know how he gets out of his clothes. Roman they walk up and down steps. They are now getting very good at when they want to watch Mickey, they bring you the remote. There's a bunch of stuff they do and they're not even 2 yet. So I'm just really impressed by that. And I would hate to have missed all of this because I was working, because that's time you can't get back. But you just said a couple of things I did want to go back to in relation to the village. I think the most successful village we had, white people burned down. So I think we had got on the path, and then Black Wall Street, they burned it to the ground. There's been other cities that they're doing research now that may have been like that were also...
Oh, no, there's a bunch of them.
Been burned down. Yeah. So part of correction a lot of times is not just to correct this situation, it's to deter others. And we've watched a documentary on the anniversary of Black Wall Street, and they're still trying to rebuild. And they still have a really long way to go. They're going through and looking up the mass graves and all of that now.
It's so crazy that you bring that up, because I was on a call maybe a week or two ago, specifically addressing the mass graves and how the government in that area is now actively trying to cover it up again. Like they don't want to excavate all the graves. They don't want to do the research to figure out if any of the descendants of these people are still alive. Like there's all this stuff that they don't want to do. Wow. And the people of Tulsa, there's a specific name of the organization. Like they're petitioning the government federal government to step in to stop it from happening. Exactly.
This pro-Black government that's in office. We were going to talk about that, but we're not.
We got sidetracked. To that point, there are so many things that they're trying to do, but because the power at B doesn't want them to continue to pursue the matter, like it's potentially going to just go nowhere. And I think that's insane.
In 2021, we're still dealing with it. To the other part, it's funny you said about your mom, because with her wanting you and your sisters, because that was my dream. Like, and this is who I've always been as a person.
You don't have any siblings.
You want me to finish my story?
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. So what was this going?
It was always your dream.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that, but I had a separate point I was going to make. But no, it was always my dream it's similarly not with family, but with my friends. So have a cul-de-sac, and then all of us be on the cul-de-sac. That's where I was going to go. I was going to say, I've always been the person that felt like, not without the knowledge I have now, but even as a young kid, there's enough for everybody. Like, I don't have to slight you to get ahead. Like, there's enough, and there's always been enough. And there was, I don't know the person's name. I think it was maybe an Asian, really, really rich, wise person or something said, why would I worry about going broke when they print money every day?
Yep.
Like, you're so tight-fisted when they're just making money every day. They print money every day. I watched Money Heist where they just printed a bunch of money. And so, but that's always my mindset. So it's funny that she had that. because that was a dream of mine that me and a couple of my friends that I grew up with, we would all have our houses on the cul-de-sac and just live.
Let our kids just hang
Let
out.
our kids hang out. Let our kids grow up. And even now, like a lot of those same people that I would have wanted on the cul-de-sac, we got kids that are similar ages. And sadly, we all live in, for the most part, a 20-mile radius and
never see each other.
Never really see each other.
But why do you think that is?
It's just life. Like, they work and I work. And so when we get off, we want to spend time with our kids, or we got house stuff to do, or we work opposing shifts. So we have second jobs or whatever it takes just for us to survive. And not to survive, because we don't just survive, but there's stuff we want to do and we're not there yet. So everything is a constant build. Like, you never get to the place where you can like really relax, because there's still so much
step to go after
that we want to do. We've talked about putting our daughter back in dance or sports. We got 2 kids that are about to be 2, that will start to get more into sports or games or whatever it is. And I want to be able to provide them with whatever they desire. I was talking to a coworker today and just kind of explained, like, what do you want your kids to play sports? And I said, yeah. She's like, well, which ones? I said, whichever ones they want.
Yeah.
I want them to have that choice. I want them to figure out, like, if we've talked about like Roman and him being more maybe tech sound, he likes to take the phone and just play through the phone and lock the phone up or whatever, or take pictures. But then Raymond's more put blocks together, or he's found some way to climb up his dresser pretty effectively at this point.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
So I want to provide them that opportunity, but conversely, that's going to come at a sacrifice to hanging out with friends. And again, COVID makes things a little bit more difficult. But the other part, the last piece to that, before I let you kind of go back, is a lot of the grandparents today are young.
Yes.
And so they struggled for so long to provide our generation with a good life that they didn't get to enjoy that. And I was watching Joe's podcast, and Ice was talking about that. He felt bad, and why he never wanted to have kids is because he saw how much stress having kids put on his mom. And he's like, I don't want to live the life that my mom lived. And she had a sister who always traveled. And then I think that the sister got pregnant like 40-ish. And then he was like, the way the universe works, it switched. So now he's in a better position to help his mom. And so now his mom can travel. But now the other woman who used to travel, now she has young kids at like 45, 50.
Yeah.
And now she can't travel.
Not it.
So I think when you have young kids that have struggled and fought so hard and finally made it, and I would say that all of our parents have made it, but my parents got married at 20, 21. They had me at 22. My mom had me at 22. She worked, and she's still working. So once you can finally retire, I ain't trying to take care of nobody new kids. Like, I raised you the best I could. I've taught you everything I know, but I want to go to Greece. I want to go to Vegas. I want to go to Italy or whatever. All the things I never got to do that I had dreams of doing, now I can do them, and I'm not going to let keeping your kids for 5 years
stop me from doing that. And but that's a point, that is a kind of a sore spot in this conversation a lot, because, one factor of being able to have help to raise kids is when you're having kids. I had Courtney and I was 22 turning 23. So my mom was 42 turning 43. That wasn't an ideal time to become a grandparent. And when you look at how young some people become parents now, like, and I'm trying to say this sensitively, I don't want it to come off wrong. Yeah, because it's a sensitive topic. Like, teenage pregnancy is still a very prevalent thing in this society. It's been glorified a lot because of like shows on TV that make it seem like,
really? I thought the complete opposite. I feel like on TV they make teen pregnancy seem awful, which is why there's so much access to contraceptives.
Yeah, like those girls, like the show looks awful, but their lives in real life, like one of them is like 16 and Pregnant. There's a bunch of shows that were on MTV.
I got you. I feel like I didn't watch those shows, but I feel like those women were not living great lives. I think like a lot of drama.
It was a lot of drama, and which they, obviously for reality TV, they play it up even more because it's reality TV. But I don't feel like they really discouraged because they were always on the hunt. Like at the end of the episode, do you know someone who's currently pregnant or getting ready to have a baby or anything like that? But either way, like teenage pregnancy is still a thing. Like it still happens. And God forbid, like any of our kids ever come home like, hey, mom, dad, there's a baby on the way. Like, I don't even know how I would handle that, like right now in this moment. Like 10 years from now, when, Courtney obviously would be the oldest at that point, so the most available for that to happen to. And all these things we're working towards. And it's like, we want to be able to be obviously active in our kids' lives, but we want to be active in our grandkids' lives. We want to not have to worry about working so much so that we don't have a chance to enjoy our quote unquote later years, but we want to provide so that our kids don't have to worry about working in college. They don't have to worry about struggling to find a job after college. They can come home and, really get themselves settled. And like a baby, like throws a wrench in that. Like those sorts of plans, those sorts of things can like really just go way left when there's an unexpected teen pregnancy or just an unexpected pregnancy for a young person in general.
Or someone who's 33.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, we did. Like, seeing where our kids are now, and now realizing we got to start all over is like, it's an adjustment. And obviously I'm still kind of embracing it. I'm more, I guess, excited than I was at the time.
Right, because like he's kicking now and like, I
just know 3 a.m.s are coming.
Oh.
I'm not looking forward to 3 a.m.s. We're about to really starting to get into potty training. Not going to bed again. It's like, there's just a lot of, and I think I've said it on this podcast, but like, at this point in kids' lives, they're just takers. They're just savages. They're just pillagers of all things. They're pillagers of time, food, everything. And now I got to do that again. And now, obviously, there's a lot of great moments that come with that. But even as a parent, I'm not super looking forward to that part. So I can only imagine 20 years from now, if our daughter brings up 15 years from now, if our daughter brings a kid, like, I'm not trying to do that at this age. I definitely don't want to do it at 45 almost. So yeah, I just think it's tough. I don't know if kids are different I don't know what kids were like back in that era where you had the village, but these kids, they crazy. You gotta fight these kids.
I don't feel like, I don't know. You made me lose my whole point. Yeah, but it can be inconvenient in a lot of ways when your child unexpectedly has a child and now your child is unable to care for said child. Mm-hmm. So now you're caring for your grown child and their child and all the drama that also can entail. Like the whole baby daddy, baby mama thing, like we see it on TV, we see it on social media, we see it in our everyday lives with people that we know. Like, it's trash. If you're fortunate enough to be able to have a good relationship with the partner, with the parent of your child, like, that's a godsend. But a lot of times, that's just not how it works. And so then you're bringing that another added level of stress into an already stressful situation. And so it's like a lot of people don't want to deal with that. They have, again, they've got their own life that they possibly put on hold when they had you. And they want to go out and live their best life and do all these things. Like I said, fortunately for me, that wasn't the case when I had Courtney. Like I said, my mom, like I was at the hospital, my mom came straight from the airport to the hospital. And like I was sitting in there trying to figure out.
Where was she from the airport?
She had been in California visiting one of her girlfriends.
Gotcha.
And Courtney came. And I was sitting, and this is old Robyn, like this is not Robyn currently, but I was sitting in the hospital thinking like, I think all I had at home in my refrigerator was like some orange juice and some vodka. Like I didn't like have like groceries. And I'm just like, what am I about to do with this kid? Like, I wasn't working full time at the time. I was freelancing.
Have you told them how? Because to most people, it sounds like, what do you mean? Like,
right. Like, I didn't know I was pregnant with Courtney. I went to the hospital for back pains, and I came home 4 days later with the baby. I could have been on like that TV show. Like I'm bigger in both my pregnancies with the boys and this pregnancy, which is ridiculous, than I ever was with Courtney. I can show you guys pictures of like how cute I was, but you wouldn't have thought that I was pregnant. You would have thought I was just, baby fat. But no, I came home from the hospital, with Courtney. And so I guess that is an interesting part of the dynamic because I had no idea what I was going to do with this kid that was just suddenly here. And now I have to figure out what to do with her. And had I not had the people in my life that I have, our story could have ended up way, way different. But my mom came and she was just like, well, you're not moving back into you're not taking my granddaughter back into my basement apartment. You're just going to move home and we're going to figure everything out. And that's exactly what we did. And she's been helping me figure things out pretty much until we got married. Like anytime I needed to do something, if I had a job I wanted to go try and get, if I had a photo shoot that I wanted to do, like, my mom, my sister, and even at one point, like my friends, like everybody was there to help with little Courtney. And now, like I said, like we have each other and we have our parents, your dad and Lauren and your mom and like all these people who are eager to be involved in the kids' lives. And it helps us tremendously. Like it gives us time. It allows for us to travel. Like looking at the rest of this year, if we didn't have the system that we have,
real different,
it wouldn't look like this. Like we literally just so many things that we wouldn't be able to do.
You might not be. I got to go.
You got to go. Okay.
No.
I mean, you're going to Vegas in a few weeks without me, so.
Finally. It's a long time coming.
What do you mean?
I ain't taking no trips without you or them by myself.
Well, have fun.
Yeah.
You have taken trips without me.
Wait.
You went to Oakland.
We weren't together?
We were together. We weren't married, but we were together.
You was pregnant? It's for my birthday.
And we found out, like, yeah, I was pregnant. Well, we didn't know I was pregnant yet. Oh. But I was pregnant. No, because we found out right before your birthday.
I do remember talking to you when I was out there.
How you don't remember?
I didn't know it was together.
We were together. Because I was supposed to go with you, but I couldn't get off of work.
You supposed to go?
Yes. This is just sad. Just see people. Nah. That was such an aside. Like, has nothing to do with anything. But we would not be able to do the things that we do
Fact.
Without our system. And like, obviously, we're super appreciative of it. Is it realistic to expect for them to do that? No, I don't think it's realistic to expect it. But I think just when and I think this is just how I think, or how I view a family dynamic, is just when there's children in this. I don't know, like, I live in this kumbaya world in my head where I think everybody should get along and everybody should love each other. And everybody should be able to help each other, regardless of all circumstances, because you're family. But realistically, that's not how the world works. People be mad, people hold grudges, people are upset because this thing, that thing 20 years ago, like you said, there's so many things in families now that stop people from having those kinds of relationships. God forbid, when you have your kid, you just decide that you want those relationships to be better just because of a kid. And that's typically not how those things work. So ideally, you would be able to expect for people to help you. But realistically, no. It's just not a given anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton else as far as the reality aspect of it. So yeah.
So I guess I would say, and I guess we'll ask this last question and then we'll wrap it up and say the rest for next week. So should it matter if where a person is in life? Like, if they're, what are you doing?
Oh, someone's on. Just trying to figure out who it was.
Oh. Should it matter if the person is a single parent or if it's a married couple, if it's a young person who's had a baby versus someone who's more mature? Like, does that really come into play when you're thinking about helping someone raise their kids?
I think it should. I definitely think it should. I think there's more factors than that. Like your situation is different from if you had led all the way up, like we did the second time. We had baby shower, we had planning. There were people involved in the process. People actually even threw us a baby shower, and now we realize how important that was. Now that we're planning this baby shower, versus I went in for back pain, and then 4 days later I have a whole child. Like, I feel like the person that has a whole child probably needs a lot more help and support, especially when they ain't got no groceries. Like, they don't got no crib. They have nothing to accommodate a child's lifestyle. So when you have a single mom that's on her own, like, she needs help. And I feel like as a parent, you have a responsibility to take care of your grandchildren. Even if you don't have a great relationship with the grandchildren's parent, like, say it's a strained relationship, those are still your grandkids. And I think if you have the ability to help, you should. I just think that's humane.
Yeah.
The humane thing to do. Family as well. And I'm not huge on the whole family dynamic. I look at family differently from a lot of people. But I do believe that it's important that you help when you can. And if you're made aware, like, I'd be really pissed if our kids brought home pregnant as a teenager. And I'm not going to say it wouldn't change the dynamic in a relationship, because we're going to train them to not do that. But stuff happened.
Yeah.
And I don't want either one to struggle, but I definitely wouldn't want a child that can't fend for itself to struggle.
Right.
So depending on where we are in life, depending on if we still have 3 other kids here that are relatively young, that would not be ideal. So we're going to keep praying against that. But I think it does matter. If it's a married couple that's good and together, I don't think the parents need to be as hands-on like ours. They help where we need, specifically for our travel needs, but they don't really buy the kids a bunch of stuff. They don't pay for doctor's appointment. They're not taking us to and from doctor's appointments because we can get there for the most part. So I definitely think it matters.
I agree. With really everything you said. But not in like a judgmental way, but more so it's like when you're at certain points in life, you should be able to handle becoming a parent better than other times. Now, there are always situations where, like you said, like my situation, where it's an extreme case and there needs to be some hands-on involvement. Or even like, unfortunately, I saw this story recently. A woman was pregnant, and I'm sure it happens frequently. A woman was pregnant, her husband goes off to war, doesn't come home. So, like stuff like that, like those things happen. That's life. And so you compound all those different scenarios. You can't just generalize it into one category. But I would think, depending on where you are in life, it determines how much help you should need with your kids. Like you said, like a married couple that's functioning well and they've got their stuff together, like they shouldn't need as much help as a young single mother, father. Someone who's more established in their career financially, doesn't need as much financial help as someone who is just starting out and, it's not really making a whole lot because kids are expensive.
And they get more expensive day by day.
Yeah. So I think it's just, there's just different ways to look at it. But like you said, if you see someone struggling, if you know someone needs help, especially someone who's close to you or you have some form of relationship with, like, I think you should help regardless of where person is in life, because we all have our moments where we're not doing as well. Like, we might have everything completely together financially, but emotionally completely torn apart and broken down. And kids need, especially young children, like, yeah, they're expensive, but they just want love and attention and all of that kind of stuff more than they could care about how much anything costs. And I think those are the places where sometimes people forget that a parent can be lacking. Because if a parent is lacking in some of those more important areas that aren't physically seen, like you don't visibly see them, the child can still suffer. Like, you've got all the money, but my mom's not here for me emotionally. Like, that can hurt a kid just as much as if the kid was growing up poor.
Yeah.
So I think it's more so being able to provide what parent needs support in.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, we have a lot to get to. I think it's a deep subject that I think there's parts of it. I think the other part to that is the parent. We watched Godfather of Harlem, and where the quote unquote grandparents took the kid and raised it as their own because the mom was on drugs. I think the other piece to this is, I feel like in the Black community, I've seen it maybe more, but actually I've seen it in the white community too, where instead of just taking the kid for a number of years, they go get custody of kid. And so now legally, they're now the guardian. I actually have family members that have, kind of went through that.
Yeah.
So starting with the woman's post, whereas the grandparent could have just took the kid and left parental control with the parent, they went a different way. They went a legal route. And that could be, obviously because there was a fight over, taking the kids. And so maybe that was the only alternative. But I just think it is very nuanced. But if your kids need help, because we all make bad decisions. Nobody can stand here and say they haven't made bad decisions. And not just one. We've made a bunch.
Multiple.
And some of us were more fortunate than others. Some of us less fortunate. But when you can help, I think you should help. So, go ahead. Good.
So this is going to be part 1 of this little talk here about Black family unit. We'll continue this second part next Monday. I'm really excited to see what you guys' feedback is on this episode. Don't forget to leave comments. If you have questions or if there's something that you want us to talk about on the next pod, just drop us a little message, DM us, all that good stuff. And we'll make sure that we address it in the next video.
Perfect. To everybody who joined our live, Sports Live, thank you so much to that as well.
Yeah, that was fun. We'll have to do that again.
We've made it to Steph Curry, episode 30. What?
No, I keep forgetting that you keep making like those sports references with the numbers and stuff, because 29 was who?
We didn't talk about it.
Oh, okay.
Because it was the live.
It was the live. I could have sworn you said something though.
Did I?
I thought you did.
The first player would have been Eric Dickerson, but I don't think I said that.
I think you did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But whoever you said, like, I didn't know who they were. Yeah. And so I was really confused.
Well, just know the Reggie Miller episode is coming up next. Shout out to Indiana.
Yay.
So yeah, thank you. Like, share, subscribe, hit that bell so you get notifications. Throughout the week we drop little tidbits, little quick hitters. Some of our videos are still doing really big numbers. So thank you, thank you. If this is your last time listening to us, thank you. If this is your first time, thank you, and continue to listen. In life, things happen. You have the power to choose what you do. Choose wisely. Always bet on you. And if we have been a blessing to you, go ahead and bless us back. Cash App in the bio and the link. Take care. Stay up. Be easy.